This presentation will be a brief overview of the history of school libraries in the United States. The quote you see speaks to the importance of the school library that should be on every campus. Harold Howe was a former California high school principal and served as Commissioner of Education during the administration of Lyndon Johnson. The school library that's pictured is Cal Middle School in the Sacramento City Unified School District and sits just a few blocks away from the college in William Land Park. Their library is a fine example of a dynamic school library. Since this presentation is about the history of libraries, I wanted to share a publication with you that's recently become available. It's a 100-year retrospective in history of the California School Library Association and includes a wide variety of information on library services as they developed in California. I've placed a copy of the book in the reserve section of the library at the college, in case some of you might like to pursue it. It's really a beautiful edition with timelines, graphics, primary sources, articles from publications going way back, and just a wonderful overview of the progress of libraries in California. So library history can be traced back as far as the 4th century with the establishment of the Great Library of Alexandria. It was a treasure trove of written manuscripts, hand-copied, illuminated manuscripts that were typically created and maintained by monks and were used by the privileged classes. These manuscripts were often as valuable as farms or houses. It was the ancient world's single greatest archive of knowledge, a place of study that had lecture areas, a zoo, gardens, and shrines to the 9 muses. It's also estimated that it held over 500,000 documents or scrolls that were pretty much designed on papyrus. Over 100 scholars lived at the library. It was a huge tragedy when it was destroyed by fire in an attack by Julius Caesar. So beginning in the 1500s, the Hornbook, an early print format, was put into the hands of children and used for reading instruction up until the 1800s. It was typically a small wooden paddle with printed paper pasted on top and covered with translucent horn. The board ended in a handle that a child held while reading, and often had a hole drilled in the arm so that they could link it to their belt. Hornbooks contained the alphabet in capital and small letters, followed by combinations of vowels with consonants to form syllables, the Lord's Prayer, and Roman numerals. By the 1700s, the concept of books created specifically for youngsters was established with the first picture book, Orbis Sensualium Pictus, by Johann Amos Comenius in 1657. In this slide, you can see an image of the title page and a typical page from the book. The title means the visual world in pictures, kind of like a picture dictionary. The invention of the printing press in 1455 promised young people greater access to printed materials. Books were more available for all readers, and literacy rates throughout Europe began to soar. Eventually, publishers like John Newbery, who is on the next slide, an English publisher, promoted materials that were both pleasurable and informative for young people. His first book, published for children, was The Little Pretty Pocketbook. A page of the book is shown in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. Even though he published specifically for children well into the 20th century, books and other learning materials remained expensive and rare for most young people in the United States. It's fitting that the Newbery Award is given annually by the Association for Library Service to Children to the author of the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. Although Benjamin Franklin envisioned a library in his academy, widespread public recognition and support for school libraries didn't develop until the 19th century, when state legislatures acknowledged the value of school libraries and began promoting their funding. By 1876, 19 states appropriated funding for school libraries. Two factors, however, limited overall success of these early efforts to support school libraries. First, the lack of library facilities for maintaining the developing collections within the schools. And secondly, the lack of trained personnel for selecting, organizing, and circulating the books. Materials were often overseen in small classroom collections by individual teachers who couldn't ensure students had access to materials throughout a school, who were not coordinated with other teachers to track library inventories, and who often took materials from one building to another as they changed teaching positions. Meanwhile, the public library movement was developing in the United States, and trained public librarians reached out to address the needs in the public schools. The 20th century was a tumultuous one in which school librarians continued to address the challenges of the 19th century and developed the vision for school library programs in the 21st century. Setting the stage for changes to come was the conversation in the early 1900s on such educational principles as the importance of genuine learning experiences and the teacher as a guide, not a taskmaster. Challenges to 19th century teaching philosophies were an aspect of educational planning as school libraries began their 20th century transformation. Historically, the primary source of information for a school was an on-site collection of diverse materials and equipment. However, technological changes have increased the quantity of information, creating a need for strong literacy and technology skills, creating new formats and interconnecting worldwide information. The typical collection has changed to include information sources from beyond the school. Today's school library collections include printed materials, realia, which are real things, hardware and software, online databases, and often production equipment. Ideally, the modern school library has a professionally trained staff that includes a teacher librarian who is a credentialed teacher with an additional school library credential, and one or more library technicians. The teacher librarian manages a collection of resources that are selected to support the school curriculum, meet individual student needs and interests, and ensure students developing information literacy skills within the school's curriculum. This is accomplished by a collaborative teaching model where the classroom teacher and teacher librarian plan together, teach together, and evaluate together the units of instruction that are designed to incorporate information literacy skills into content areas. Trained school library paraprofessional staff is essential to successful programs that contribute to student learning. The Model School Library Standards for California Public Schools, K-12, were adopted by the California State Board of Education in 2010 and state that the school library is staffed by a team consisting of a credentialed teacher librarian and paraprofessional staff. This is the basic building level staffing for an effective program. The standards incorporate information literacy skills at each grade level. Students learn to access, evaluate, use, and integrate information and ideas found in print, media, and digital resources. This makes it possible for them to function in a knowledge-based economy and technologically oriented society. The publication also includes school library program standards, which represent the minimum expectations for a school library to meet so that students will be able to achieve the library standards. There are numbers indicated in each library program area for staffing, for access to the library, and for resources. Those numbers provide the concrete foundation needed for effective learning and are intended for all schools, elementary, middle, and high school. The standards are available for review on the California Department of Education website, and I've included the link in your content folder. So, this would be a perfect time to go to your textbook, Where Do I Start?, and have a look at the section in Chapter 1, which is about the mission of the school library. Your first assignment is to write a mission statement for a school library, and the information and many examples in this section will be of great assistance to you. You may select a library at any level, elementary, middle school, or high school. If you are working in a school, you should consult the school's mission statement and make sure the one you write for the library is compatible. So, that's all for now. Stay tuned. I shall be back.